Days after a suicide bomber killed at least 100 people in Pakistan's Peshawar city, dozens of police officials are now staging a protest against rising terrorism in Pakistan. The Khyber Pakhtunkhwa police force demonstrated in front of the Peshawar Press Club, raising slogans against rising terrorism. The demonstrators denounced terror attacks in the city and demanded peace in the country. Some even carried placards condemning the recent violence, while others chanted slogans in support of the police. Now, provincial police demonstrating against terrorism in Pakistan is being seen as a very rare move.
No one can scare us, and we are not afraid. Terrorists can do whatever they want. We are here to fight by the grace of God. We wore this uniform to fight against them. We just want our hands to be free and power as per Constitution so we can fight against them.
Now, on January 30th, a suicide bomber blew himself up at a mosque in Peshawar's police lines. The attack was carried out during prayers at the heavily guarded facility, forcing the roof to collapse on those praying at that time. Now, at least 100 people died and over 220 people were injured in the blast. Reports say that the authorities have arrested at least 23 people in connection with the attack. Now, responding from across the border, Taliban's acting foreign minister Amir Khan Muttaqi said that Pakistan should not put the blame for the Peshawar attack on Afghanistan. Muttaqi added that there is no terrorist base in Afghanistan and the country's soil will not be used against other countries.
We ask Pakistan's ministers to not throw the snow off their roofs onto the roofs of others. They should consider their problems in their own country. We advise them to look into the Peshawar explosion in great detail.
At the same time, a political blame game around the rise in terror incidents in the country has begun. While condemning the suicide attack in Peshawar, former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan claimed that the government was trying to delay elections on the pretext of the security situation. He also added that he was not responsible for the resurgence of terrorism in Pakistan. Now, this came shortly after Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif slammed Imran's PTI for letting the terrorist return. He accused the PTI government in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa of failing to maintain security despite availability of special funds for this very purpose. For more on this, we're now being joined by Hassan Kamal Watto, live from Islamabad. Watto is a lawyer, writer and a columnist. Welcome to the broadcast, Mr. Watto. Right now, in a very rare move, the police officers are demonstrating against rising terrorism in Pakistan. It is seldom that we see such kind of protests take place in Pakistan. My question to you is that how is the Shehbaz Sharif government viewing these demonstrations at the moment?
Thank you. Sorry, your voice was cutting a bit. Do you mind repeating the question?
Right. I want to ask you that these kind of demonstrations by the police officers against rising terrorism in Pakistan is very seldom and rare. How is the Shehbaz Sharif government viewing these demonstrations at the moment?
Absolutely. Well, from within Pakistan, one thing that I can tell you is that blanket these heinous terrorist attacks has been nothing but condemnation, outrage and an absolute rejection of this terrorism that had plagued Pakistan for so long, that it caused so much loss of life, so much misery, so much bloodshed, so many tears, so many orphans. It's something that absolutely no one in Pakistan that I have seen, at least in the entirety of the community, is willing to condone in the slightest these sort of terrorist attacks. And it's while it was gutting to see the visuals earlier of these terrorist attacks having returned to Pakistan, it has been heartwarming to see the ubiquitous nature of our rejection as a country of this menace that seems to have spilled in from across the border, that seems to be a byproduct of some Machiavellian geopolitical designs from some political players, but the public at large, just like I'm sure the public of India would agree, terrorism is something that has no place in any modern society and has to be rejected outrightly. Now, as it comes to the government reaction, I have seen a positive reaction from the government as well when it comes to absolutely rejecting the past mistakes that have resulted in these sorts of terrorist attacks manifesting, which have included a lack of national cohesion, a lack of civil-military balance. I've seen a statement from the Prime Minister which was very positive in that respect and spoke to the need to have an urgent just squaring up of this threat, to not brush it under the rug, not ignore it any longer, which I, of course, view as a positive step from Pakistan.
Right. Now, I also want to ask you that how do you assess the political blame game that is happening in Pakistan around the rise in terrorism at the moment?
I would not actually call it a blame game of sorts. There's, of course, rumors circling around Islamabad at the moment that there is some attempt to be made to delay the elections and somehow use terrorism as a reason for that. But as a lawyer, one thing I can vouch for without a shadow of doubt is that the Constitution of Pakistan does not provide any such route to avoid elections. Even if a world war breaks out, even if a plague or a famine breaks out, the Constitution does not allow for any exceptions in that front. So if any politician, I've not seen any politician explicitly state that they would like to do this, but it's all rumors so far. But if any politician or if any other political leader and anyone at all were to make such a misadventure, I believe it would be rightfully struck down immediately by the courts, because that would be an unconstitutional step. It would be hitting the country when it's already down, because when a country is attacked, that it needs to focus more on its rule of law rather than to throw all of its laws into the dustbin. If you set your laws on fire in moments of test and in more trying times, then you're not really going to be left with much else. Then the terrorists win. If you allow them to break your constitution and allow them to trick you into flouting your own laws, there could be no greater tragedy than that, in my view. I'm reminded of Churchill asking in World War II when his London was being bombed. For all his flaws, I don't like Churchill at all, but he asked one thing: are the courts still running? Is Parliament still running? If yes, we've still country. I would like for Pakistan not to go down any dark routes like that.
Right. You mentioned that there is no blame game going on in Pakistan over rise in terrorism. But I also want to reiterate that the Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has slammed Imran Khan's PTI for letting the terrorists return to country after the suicide bomb blast took place.
Absolutely. As in every country, whenever there's matters of domestic security and national security, and governments have been shifting, in our case perhaps more quickly than most other countries. The PTI government fell after about 4 years and the PDM coalition government took over. There are naturally going to be disagreements on national security policy, which is, of course, led by the Prime Minister. So that's, I think, very, very normal. I don't view that as anything sort of contradictory to the ethos of Pakistan. It's good for democracy when politicians critique each other's policy decisions and look for better solutions. Now, if the current Prime Minister has a better solution, what I would urge as the leader of the hour is a sort of national cohesion, because if this sort of attack does not unite the country, then I don't know what will.
Right, Mr. Watto. My last question to you before I let you go. Taliban has clearly said that Pakistan should not put the blame for the Peshawar attack on Afghanistan. Do you think that the latest statement by Taliban can be seen as a reaction to Pakistan Interior Minister Rana Sanaullah's statement where he blamed neighboring countries for sheltering TTP?
Well, absolutely. It is clear so far, based on the information that we have, that the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan has some sort of links with the TTP in Afghanistan. And not to mention the ideological sort of victory that was felt at the fall of Kabul by certain sectors of society that led to the strengthening and the consolidation of power and the strengthening of armaments as well for those who seek to cause destability in Pakistan. The TTP was absolutely strengthened. Now what Pakistan needs to look into is how will it curtail that threat of terrorism from a country which is perceived to be a sort of friendly government in Afghanistan Taliban. That distinction between a good Taliban and a bad Taliban, it seems to have rested on weak ideological footings to begin with. And when you've got weak foundations and a weak ideology, you can't really build much on top of that. So what I would urge my government to do is to hold, at the very least, a principled position when it comes to the bare essentials, the bare foundations, which are that, you cannot wage a war against a sovereign country and elected government. You cannot ban girls' education. You cannot behead people. You cannot take the laws into your own hands. So if my country were to take a principled position on those fronts, that would, I believe, be in its own best interests.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Vattu, for joining us on WION This Hour and sharing your insights on this. Thanks very much.
Thank you for having me.